Christian Whiton. Christian, thanks so much for coming back on the U.S. Report. Hey, somebody else we do hear a lot about is Tom Homan, the border czar, who's been doing, I think, a pretty good job about keeping the border secure, to the point now where we have seen the crossings across the Darien Gap, which is one of the ways that people come up into the United States, go to basically zero. But at the same time, some people aren't agreeing with him. Have a look at Tom Homan slamming the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, here.
Let's talk about your governor. Your governor who stayed on national TV after NYPD were assaulted by illegal alien gang members. You had a woman burned alive by illegal alien subway. Your governor stands on national TV. I think criminal aliens should be deported. What's one of the first things she do? She goes down to New York City and tries to fire the mayor who wants to help me find public safety threats.
Christian, this was one of the big issues that Donald Trump won on, and I love Tom Homan's passion. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think the people will react to it well. He's great as sort of, a new, not top cop. I don't know who America's top cop is, but we've had this sort of absence of a law and order figure, and he's really filling it, I think, quite well. And he has a really easy opposition because Hochul is clueless on this. Donald Trump was basically run out of New York. They prosecuted him there on a bunch of phony baloney things. He became a resident of Florida. He could just say, vaya con Dios, enjoy the urban decay, but he is still a New Yorker. He was born there, born in Queens. And he really wants to help the city. It is America's financial capital, against the will, essentially, of the governor, who is clueless. But you have a mayor of New York City who actually should be more liberal than the governor, who's saying, yeah, we could use federal help in getting these illegal immigrants, criminals under control. And so that's what's happening, and he's cooperating. Hochul would be very smart just to go along with it, because New York, I don't think, will ever be a Republican state, but it's not going to be as left as it was if Trump succeeds in controlling crime.
Well, I think you're right, Christian, and knowing New York very well as I do, and that pledge he made to make the cities great and the cities clean and the cities safe again, I think this is a big part of it. Hey, before I let you go, I want to have a little chat here about tariffs. Now, we spoke about them earlier in the show, and there's been a lot of international negative reaction to them, particularly here in Australia. But I want to find out what's going on in the United States. How are Americans feeling about the Donald Trump plan to put tariffs on imported goods, steel and aluminium in particular? But now it looks like there's a trade war kicking off with the EU, and even champagne could be more expensive.
That's right. Again, these are sort of good opponents to have. As your previous guest mentioned, Australia actually has a trade deficit with the United States, so I don't think Trump is particularly interested in putting tariffs on Australia, and also just the Pacific defense angle. But, Europe, I think he's disappointed with them over Ukraine, over their freeloading, over their unfair tariffs on U.S. farmers. The French, easy targets. So the EU put a tariff on American-made whiskey, slapping back with a 200% tariff on French-made wine, actually wine made anywhere in the EU. I'll bet they buckle. I mean, I think the French and the Italians are going to go screaming to Brussels and say we have to give and we have to do something. So far, the tariffs haven't affected people's lives. They've just been a very useful tool to get Canada and Mexico and other governments like that to pay attention to Trump on illegal immigration and fentanyl. The stock market's dropping. Voters don't actually blame the president for short-term fluctuations in the market. If long-term there is a spike in prices, but I don't think we're really going to see that happen. There is the question of how often Trump can threaten tariffs and then sort of when the other country backs down, back away. I think eventually he does want higher systemic tariffs on Mexico and the EU, but we'll have to wait and see about that.
Well, can you just give us maybe a little bit of insight before you go here into what the thinking is? Because, if Trump keeps hitting that tariff button, as you suggest, it will become less effective, and it will also cause a lot of uncertainty in the markets. We're heading into a period of great global instability. We know the United States wants to pivot to China. Is there a danger, though, that he winds up alienating economically and diplomatically countries that he wants on their side as he pivots towards the Pacific and towards this, contest with China, which he does see as a real peer competitor to the United States?
Yeah, I don't think that's come up so far. The problem is Europe is pretty much useless against China. I'm sure they'll sort of rhetorically be on our side if we had to fight, in contrast to Australia, which has fought with the United States in every war since World War II, even the sort of unfortunate ones. You've always been there. And same with, other countries that would be affected with steel and aluminum tariffs across the board, like India, Brazil, China. Obviously, China's, we're not going to be upset if they're upset. Trump is determined to bring back some manufacturing. It doesn't mean we want to go back to a 1970s or 60s economy. We have shifted to largely a services-focused and heavily financialized economy, but twisting the needle back somewhat. Some of the things that Vice President Vance wrote in his book, Hillbilly Elegy, about the decline of manufacturing and the psychological impact. Trump really does believe that tariffs, and I do too, and if you look at American history, there were times when tariffs were too high, like under Smoot-Hawley during the Depression. But from when George Washington was president, through most of our history, tariffs were higher than they are now.
Well, exactly right. I always tell people, go back and read about William McKinley. He was your tariff guy. Anyway, Christian Whiton, thank you so much for your time. Meanwhile, I think we've had enough doom and gloom and tariff talk. How about a little good news? Remember way back in 2020 when Black Lives Matter and Antifa held a 3-day insurrection outside the White House and were rewarded with this bit of street art, which became known as Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington, D.C.? Well, guess what? That's all over now. Black Lives Matter Plaza is gone. Check out this footage. Oh, and by the way, after Trump threatened to withhold funding to the Washington, D.C. city government, they've also started cleaning up homeless encampments. Having been to the U.S. Capitol a number of times in recent years, I can tell you that is the sort of cleaning up Washington really needs. Stick around because we've got Brianna Lyman after the break.